Bonsoir. I'm here with ShLaYa. I'm going to do one of my grilled interviews with him. And so, first place I want to start with you is actually when I was looking on Leaguepedia and it says your past teams, it lists this team from quite a while ago with no dates or anything. It just says LaGG. Yeah. And the reason this was interesting is because when I'd been researching some other players, so Yellowpete, Krepo, these guys, they were also in this team, and so was ViRtU4l, who's now in your team now. When people see all those famous names in that team, they're going to think, oh, is this like an important team or something? But when I was talking to ViRtU4l, he said like it wasn't really that big deal a team. Like he didn't even think any of the others would go on to become pro players or anything. Was this like the beginning of your pro career when you were in this team?
Well, when we were in this team, we were like friends and stuff, but we had 6 players and Krepo was playing mid and support in the same time, so it was kind of hard to get 5 players, you know. We were just swapping because we were friends. So we did some ESL tournaments, like IEM and stuff, so we just qualified for some, but we missed at the final round to go out, and we decided to split because they had some contact with Wicked and stuff, so they did a team. They picked the bot lane, literally, like Yellowpete and Krepo. I come to get a team, and I get the contact from Millennium, so we just decided to split up. That's the point.
And since, like I mentioned, obviously those guys went on to be in CLG and now EG, and now ViRtU4l is in your team. How good were they actually back then? Like, were any of them you actually thought would become top players? Were they just okay? What were they like?
Well, I always feel like 2 players where I was are really good and really smart. So for me, it was kind of obvious they're gonna be on the scene because, well, you feel it when someone is good. You feel it. So yeah, it's just a back meeting, I would say.
What was interesting was ViRtU4l said that he didn't think they'd be successful because they were so passive in their playing style. But obviously, that's pretty much what CLG became famous for, this very, very passive playing style. Was everyone like hyper-aggressive back then in Europe? Like, what was the style back then?
Well, I think they understand like their playstyle doesn't work anymore. So they just change, and if they didn't change, they would get crushed and crushed and crushed. So I think it's a good way to improve. It's to change everything. And they learn something when they play aggressive. They learn like, oh, we should not do that. And now I think they are really a strong team and top Europe.
Another interesting connection between you and Freddy is that when you were in this team GSU, he was in Eclipsia and he went to this LAN, and actually he was on that Eclipsia team, but then all 4 of you that are now in AAA were all on this other team that beat him. Like, had you always been thinking at the time, like, one day I want him to come back into my team again? Like, what prompted you to bring him into the team again?
So, first of all, I wanted Freddy in my team since so much days. Like, I told him, you wanna come with us? Like, he said, no, I don't wanna be with 4 French. Like, okay. I understand, it's like, you will feel lonely and stuff. So, he said no, and he does the Paris Games Week with AA. And we go with GSU, and we beat them. So it was I was kinda happy to beat them, to be honest, because we wanted to go under the tag AA, but they said no. They take another team. So yeah. So after they split up because they didn't feel, you know, they were strong enough to win things. So they just split up. And I joined Carlius because I feel my previous team was not, you know, good enough, or we had no structure as well, so we are like friends, good players, but not really team. And when we join AA, it's an association, but a real team, you know, and you feel professional and you work on it. So yeah, it's when you got an organization, the way to be professional is way better and way easier.
Yeah, sure. So even though I just mentioned there that the 4 who were the French players in AA now were the ones playing in that GSU team, when you first made against All Authority now, yeah. Even though the 4 players who were in GSU are in AA now, 2 of them weren't because you brought them in later. You brought in ViRtU4l in January, yeah, and then you brought in the dude like recently. So initially, you didn't actually have this lineup of players. How good did you actually think the other lineup was? Because when you'd only changed ViRtU4l came in January, your record before you brought in Dioud was only like 6-12. It wasn't so good. Whereas now, your record since you brought in Dioud is like 4-3 since then. So you actually have a winning record since you brought him in. Like, was there some big problems with the old lineup? Like, what did you think of the old lineup that you had in AAA?
Well, before we were not professional at all. Like we just scream a lot, but we lose and okay.
Even here at LCS?
Yeah, like before we had no manager. We are screaming together, but it was kinda not professional. But we were training, but it was not. We had no goal. It's just play. Oh, I can play this. I can play this. And now we have a really strategy because our manager is doing now some job. So we have a really strategy between behind everything. And before we had Carlius and Nodo are not really friends. So the training was when we are losing, they are arguing so much. But it was because they got two playstyle different. So one is aggressive and defensive. So when one dies means the other is in fault, you know. But now Dioud and Nono know themselves perfectly, so they just play aggressive and win their lane, and yeah, everything is good now. But only problem was Freddy doesn't want to be with 4 French, but now he's stuck.
Sure. So if we talk about Freddy then a little bit, to people who are just fans, like before LCS happened, I don't think a lot of people knew many of the players in your team. Like maybe people who watched online cups in Europe knew a few of the players, but especially like Americans, for example, wouldn't have known anyone because they only know like fnatic, SK, you know, these big name teams. And so when I've read comments about your team's performance so far in LCS, people are like, oh, this Freddy guy's carrying them. He's like an amazing top playing guy. Is he like the star of your team? How do you think of him within the team?
Well, actually, I think we are really top, you know, 4 and 8 between this. So we have no. Sometimes I have now some game. Sometimes I have a bad game. Sometimes Freddy have a bad game. Sometimes he doesn't, and Nono as well. I think right now we have all our good games and bad games. So when one is behind, you can trust the other to carry you. So it's fine. I like this feeling. I don't want to be like, oh, we got one top player. We have to make everything around him. For me, it's bad because if you get behind and the game is over since the start. So we want to get 5 carries in our team and not 4 and 1 support, or 2 and 1 top and 1 jungle. We want 5 carries.
I mean, is that actually possible? Because I mean, if you look at a lot of teams, even some really, really good teams might say that they only have like 2 or 3 carries or threats, and the rest of the guys are supporting them. Like, is it like what do you have to do to make that happen?
Yeah, it's all about picks, to be honest. Like, if you want to get 1 carry, you have to build a team around, and it's pretty much it. Because if you go, for example, Cartus with a big carry, and you go for, like we play against the SK, and we go Tariq jungle with a sOAZ support, so it's double support. It means our carry have to be fed, and he ends the game 14-0, so it was a deal. And for example, today we play against Giant, we won, and I had Kha'Zix, and I had to go every time solo and beat all of them alone. I was a bit the guy who has to carry, and other have to do work for before. I had to be stronger.
Okay, so if your team's trying not to just have like one obvious person carrying the whole game, if you talk about ViRtU4l as like an individual player, obviously his name doesn't have the star power of like Wicked, sOAZ, these really famous top laners from Europe. Where does he actually rank just skill-wise compared to them though? Like what similarities does he have? What differences? What do you think?
I think he's a smarter, you know, you pick in picks. I think he's a smarter picks in top lane.
Okay.
And yeah, I think so. I think sOAZ is really good at teamfight and roaming. He's one of the best. And I think we can manage his lane perfectly in 1v1 situation. So there is kind of, you know, players and different play style. You can compare, for example, Froggen and Alexich. Froggen is amazing at farming and got like support carries like Anivia Lux, and sometimes he can go Cartus as well. So and I never see almost Alexich playing Lux, like never, because I don't think it's his playstyle. He plays Z and Kha'Zix and want to make the plays 1v1 and beating his lane every time. So for me, it's just playstyle.
Since you're playing mid lane, and you've just mentioned some famous mid lane players from Europe there, everyone always says like Europe has really good mids. Like this is one of the best positions for Europe. But the people you're mentioning here are sort of like all-star players. Like people think of them as like the best player in their team. So we've got like the people you mentioned, Alexich, Froggen. You can even go to, in the past, someone like Ocelot or someone. these players are all considered like amazing skill level and stuff. But when I was talking to Freddie, he was saying like your team, the way you play in mid is more like for the like team fight style, because obviously it's like very hard to go 1v1 versus these guys. Like, how do you see it yourself, knowing that you have to face such high mid-level competition? Like, how do you have to play differently?
Well, my playstyle is, I think, is like one of the, I play support mid a bit, so I have just to do a good engage, perfect engage, protecting my carries, and try to do a maximum of damage without dying. So I think I'm near to Froggen playstyle champs, at least. I play this kind of champs, but I have to play like LCS champs because they are pretty strong. Like I did Kha'Zix today and Karthus with two champs that LCS plays, and Froggen play it, but not often. So my playstyle, I think, I come from jungle. Like I start mid for 5 months, I think, around. So I need to improve a lot and try to get some things from this kind of player with awesome, like LCS, Froggen, Ocelot, and every mid laner at LCS are awesome. So I just need to see what they do and mechanically, I mean.
Because like I said there, since we think of people like Froggen and Alexic as like carrying their team from their position, when I was talking to Ocelot, he was telling me that because they're so strong, he switched his style and now he's trying to be more like of a support mid-type player. Like he's playing for the team fights and he's picking champions specifically for that, not to try and just win his lane out. Is it difficult in the current meta to play versus those really, really strong mids? Like how important do you think mid is at the moment in like European meta?
I think at the moment the meta is middle. Like if you get behind in the middle, it snowball a lot. So you cannot be behind it. You have to manage it or get something in other lane if you don't win your lane. If you trade farm, I mean, you have to be strong after because the guy in front of you has the same potential as you and is as fast as you. But if you got a champ who is not stronger than him, you will get crushed because he will need more damage. And yeah, it's for me the meta actually is focus on mid lane.
Like I mentioned there, when people think of European mids, obviously the big star names come to mind, Alexic, Froggen. But we have other players like, for example, Bergson, who only became really sort of known this season in LCS. And so the thing that's difficult for like fans to gauge is like how good actually are these players compared to each other? Because obviously in terms of name, like Alexic is going to be a lot more famous than Bergson is, probably his whole career because he's got so much experience, you know. But how close, for example, are people like Bergson or these other guys playing in the bottom four teams to the guys in the top four? Like how close is the gap, do you think? Is there a big gap? What do you think?
I think each player of mid lane have their strengths. For me, Froggen is amazing at team fighting and stuff because he has this map awareness so good. I think Kha'Zix is one of the best like killers. He plays killers like Kha'Zix and Zed. He's one of the best, like definitely. Ocelot is more playstyle, and so he like to help their lane a lot and jungle and stuff. And Bergson is like, for me, is mechanically good in lanes and he's strong, I think, in lane. So yeah, I think if one of them can steal, some tips from each other, they will do and try to improve. Because there is no one big mid, there is really a top mid.
What is your take on how Froggen has played in this LCS? Because if we think of him before, in 2012, his team was really, really good, and he was the star, but his team was also very, very good, and they were competing with even like the best Koreans, best Asian teams. And now people think of his team as like falling down. They see it like going down and down. Has his actual play been as good as it was before? Does his style need to change? What do you think?
I think Froggen is still strong. Like even if he doesn't play the new champ and stuff, he's really strong, and like we target some bans on him, like Lux and Evia and Twisted Fate, for example. He's awesome with it, and I think if you give him 1 day or 2 days to play one champ, he will master him in 2 days. He just needs practice and on one champ and he's fine. But for me, he's one of the best mid laner. I think he's got the more KD and the less death. It means something. He's strong every game, and I think if you find the constantly, I think is the word. So constantly on one consistency, yeah. I think you find a good player.
In terms of when you're thinking of your own picks for middle, okay, is it the case that if like certain champions become OP, like everyone thinks this is the most powerful champion, you have to learn that champion and you have to switch to using that? Or what is the balance between going with the OP champions and going with the ones that you're just really good at but might not be OP now? Like what's the balance like for you picking?
So if you can play one pick without seeing what they pick, it means it's OP because you can manage your lane, you know. For example, I think Kha'Zix at the moment got no counter on the mid lane. Like you just blind pick it and you almost win your lane. I mean, not almost, it depends on the jungle, I mean, but if you're on 1v1, you win your lane. So for me, what is OP, it means you can 2v1 a lane. So if they swap, you know, they put AD carry and the support on you, you can farm. If you can 1v1 anyone, it means you are strong. And yeah, if you got no problem, it means it's OP for me.
When a lot of people think of strong mid players, they're usually thinking of like really mechanically strong players. But as someone who also plays mid yourself and you get to play against all these other great players, what is there a player or is there something that they do that like even impresses you? Like you know that you're not quite at that level yet and that's where you're trying to get to. Like what is just beyond your grasp in that sense?
So every game I do, I wanna watch what he did and why he did it. So I check the wave, I check the word. So for me, XPK, for example, we didn't speak about it, but I think he's one of the best. I think he got so much map awareness on the map, and when he can kill somewhere, he will do it, and he's known as split pushing stuff. So I learn a lot on watching him. I think he's streaming often, and just watching what they do, and he's speaking a lot on stream. It's helped a lot.
When someone plays mid and they're considered like the best player in their team, often they play their certain style of play and everyone else in the team adapts to what they're doing. But if you're someone who's not like a star mid player, do you have to like change how you play radically in every single game and do something different for this guy and something different for this different opponent over here? Like what is it like for you?
I think it's all about the team play, because if you play one aggressive lane and you got a jungle, he cannot gank, for example, the defensive level is playing under his tower, so the guys who is aggressive all the time will get crushed so much. So I think you have to adapt your playstyle everywhere.
Since like I mentioned actually before, your team isn't known for like having big star player names. And so even some of the teams below you, like I mentioned Bjergsen and even like ShLaYa from back in season 1, these are still like famous names even if their teams aren't doing so well. But out of the bottom 4, your team's actually doing quite well in terms of like wins over big teams, etc. And yet people would say like you don't have any star to carry the team. So is it the case that your team has like better team play than these bottom 4 teams? What do you think is the key that's making you so good if you haven't got the star power names?
We adapt to each other, to be honest. Like if you know like someone is, for example, aggressive and stuff, we're gonna play around it. If someone is passive and we got T-Speaks who is playing passive, we're gonna play passive. We adapt our team to our playstyle we want to play, and we just adapt our picks. Yeah, I think it's done. Yeah, we just play whatever we want. We have no playstyle. We just know what to do, and we just copy something, and we just try to do it as well. And we pick what we think is strong, and it's just about picks and feelings, you know. If you feel like this champ is so strong and no one play it, you just play it, because if you are good in the lane, what's the point of not picking it?
Are you someone who at all watches like the NA LCS or OGN? Do you watch these other leagues much?
Yeah, I do. Like I really do. I was watching like until 2 of the morning, 2 o'clock, NA LCS, and it was pretty good. Like I like to watch, you know, what pick they are doing and why, because the why is important. And if you understand the why, you can beat everyone, and in the laning phase at least.
Who are the NA mid players that you like to watch? Who's like interesting, or who can you take things from?
I think like if I have to say one player that I not love, but I mean my playstyle is around Nyjacky from Curse. Okay. Because he plays this kind of champ like Orianna, Morgana. Like I play a lot of Morgana and Orianna as well. He plays Cartus like me, and I feel like I got this kind of playstyle as well. And I cannot say I'm like Scara, for example, with Snow, because he play Gragas and I don't. So I just feel like if you play my champs, it means you play like me a bit.
Since people always say Europe has such good mid players, in general in NA, like they're not so known for their mid players. When you watch the NA teams, do they operate like differently? Are there carries in different positions? What do you think of the difference between the two scenes? Just from watching.
For me, you got some all-star. Like for me, the typical example of one guy carry is like CLG. They play around double if that I don't understand so much, because if double if is behind, they're gonna have some problem to carry, because they are playing two tanks, you know. So it's only two carries, two tanks, and one support. And I think it's hard to to play only this playstyle, because if the tanks are failing, they will get crushed. And yeah, I think double if is really good mechanically, and if he fails, it's gonna be hard for CLG. I think they have to change something. And I saw them playing some kind of brother tanky top lane like Jax. Nyjacky is playing Jax a lot, and I think it's good for them, because then they can have one other guy who can get some carry instead of ShLaYa on map fight.
And do you watch the Koreans much? Is there anyone from Korea who also like has a similar style, or you like to watch this guy in particular?
I think I love to watch Korean because they're always fighting, and I love it because they are not afraid. Like we are just in Europe we are like, oh, if we do that they can do that, oh, so we cannot do that, and we are not fighting. And Korean are like, no, we can do that, do it. That's it. I think Korean are more aggressive and more team play.
One comparison I heard people make between like what makes the Koreans like a little bit better is that when they have team fights, all the best teams in the world can do team fights at the beginning of the fight. But someone told me like they thought the impressive thing about Koreans is like as the team fight keeps going on and on, they're still like really coordinated and they still know what to do next, and like communication very good. Whereas some of the Western teams are really good at the beginning, but then if it keeps going on a long time, it becomes more scattered and they're just one person here, one person there. Do you see this at all?
I wish I could listen to what they say in vocal and understand. It can help a lot European teams, because I saw once Azubu Frost when I think in finals against TPA, they saw the vocal, and they were only one shot caller or something, and it's so good. And I think we just need to take some teams about team play and stuff, because I think they are strong at the moment, and they are improving each day. So I think Korean and maybe Taiwan and Chinese are the good region at the moment.
Since you said you used to play jungle before, obviously that was like a little while ago back in time now. Yeah. What do you think of jungle in Season 3? Because like people say like it's changed, like the strength of it's increased more than what it was in Season 2, like the styles. What do you think about it now, and like how do you use your jungler in your team?
Well, I think at the moment the jungle is like play OP and just play it a lot, and try to find what is OP and play it again. For me, jungle is really strict, and I think that's a Korean style. Korean style just doesn't play only OP on jungle, they play something killers that we never see on Europe, and I think it's bad, because I think killers can be fine, and then you can get a tank on middle or top lane, I don't know. We just need to be more ballsy on picks and stuff, I think.
Since you were playing in Europe when you were a jungler, like how would you explain to someone who's just a fan who only watches the games, like what was so amazing about like what Diamondprox did, where he did this like sort of almost invented the counter jungling style, invading the enemy's jungle, and like everyone knows this like sort of changed the meta in Season 2. Like what was so amazing about it? What hadn't been thought of that he was doing? I
think Diamondprox playstyle is one of the smarter in Europe. Like if you watch his replay, he's not wasting time at all. You never will see him camping from nothing. You will get something with that. So I think if you watch some replays and Diamond, you just copy a bit his playstyle, like watching what road it take and why. You will be one of the best jungler, I think. It just, for me, jungle is not skill, but it's mind game. If you know where is a jungle opponent and you can counter gank him, it means you have more skill than him.
One of the interesting things is, since like my background before this was in Counter-Strike, another 5v5 game, but what was interesting was the strongest teams in Counter-Strike were from like Sweden, Norway, these countries like Scandinavia. And yet if you look, I was trying to figure out which country has the most players in League of Legends pro teams. Yeah. And I think the main countries is like France and Poland, I think, has the most players in Europe because they have all of MYM. Germany has some as well, yeah. But I mean, these weren't necessarily thought of as like the biggest countries, like I say, in these other games. Do you have any reason as to why? I mean, since you come from France, what's the reason why there's so many famous players from there?
Well, I think if you get one French, like AAA, in the past was one of the best team, you know, and they were just playing 4 French and 1 Germany, who are MoMA. So it's easier to get in the pro scene. Like if you are no and friend with them, it's just relationship and you will be pro. Like I was not no at all. I was playing solo queue and normal game, and then I start to be no, and then I get someone who grab me and say, "Oh, come, we gotta do a team." And then you perform once well, and you are no. I think there is another team who is coming up soon. It's TCM for the qualifier, and they are all French, and yeah, I think they can do well.
So being as your French as well, we talked a little bit about sOAZ before. There's been a lot of like spotlight positive and negative because of this All-Star thing, and so people who were like loved sOAZ wanted him to be voted in. People who like didn't think Wicked was doing well were like against him, and it was like a big thing in the scene. Do you actually think sOAZ is like the best top laner now? Have you always thought it? Like, what's your opinion of him like as career-wise?
Well, I know that sOAZ do calls for Fnatic almost, but he's not the only one. But at least I think if the top lane can do calls, it means he's really good. So I think.
What do you think is hard about him for a top lane to do
well,
calls?
in top lane you have to manage your lane, like not pushing, not can go aggressive, but you have a jungle as well who is around it, so you have to manage it. You don't have a support like bot lane, you know, who can ward and warning you. And if you get ganked, you have to survive, you have to farm as well, you have to manage your tower. You can beat 2v1 as well, so I think top lane is really hard, and it's really a lane who is hard to carry, and so as pro, he can play everything. Like he played Blitzcrank, who is the only one who played Blitzcrank in top lane, like worldwide. So I think he's ballsy and he's really smart. I think, yeah. So as he's not maybe the best on his lane, but he's really good. Like for me, he deserves to go All-Star.
Aside from sOAZ and like Yellowstar and you guys, like a lot of the old French players who we think of in 2012 and 2011, a lot of them like we don't see them so often now in the pro scene, and not in LCS especially. Can you pick out a couple of people who you think like shouldn't be forgotten? Like these were like really good French players who don't necessarily play at the top now.
No, I don't see.
No,
okay. No. I think every French who start to be pro just stay pro, and I think Linak. I'm forgetting Linak. He was our jungler, and he get in place. He earned second at season 1.
Yeah.
So I think his name should be there, but I think he's the only one.
If we look to the future, so in 2012, it was still sort of like the old esports world where what you do if you're a team is, depending on how good you are, you go to tournaments in your country, and then you go to tournaments in Europe, and then if you're really good, maybe you go to a tournament in America. It's like there was an obvious stepping stone like this. But the thing with LCS is, it's really good because you get like salary and you stay in playing in one area. But the problem is, if you're not one of the teams who's going to get to the top of your region, you almost never will get to play against Koreans, against Americans, etc. And so if your team ever wants to go into this big world stage, you have to become like probably top 2 or 3 in Europe, like just to even have a chance. Like how reasonable a goal is that right now, based on where your team is at the moment? Like how reasonable is it that you could be 3rd best team in LCS next season?
I think our goal is to be on the LCS for sure and staying for the next season. But you know, you never know what happens. Like you can get beat by a team that is not there, and watching LCS every time they know what you pick, what you play. And so, well, you just have to focus and be strong each day, not saying, oh, this team is behind us, so they might be less stronger, but is strong. I mean, you just have to focus and focus and focus, and the more professionality will be on LCS for sure.
One of the weird things about LCS is that you can, if you get into top 6 spots, you get to play in the playoffs. So in theory, it's still possible to win the whole season. But if you lose, it's also possible then to get completely kicked out of LCS. So it's like it can be a very big swing between the 2 positions. Is that stressful at all? Thinking about the fact that like, I mean, your team's has a good chance of being in the playoffs, but then you could also go straight out of LCS as well. Like, is it something you've been thought about at all?
Yeah, I think it's stressful. Like, we changed our support because we were in critical situation. We were 7, and it's not even possible to be there for us because it means you are almost. It's not out. Like, if you earn 7 and 8 with the 2 last position, you still have a promotional series or qualifier, but we don't want to be 7 and 8 for the mindset. You know, if you are 8, that means you are not good together, and it's bad for our feelings and your friendship because you would just say it's because of this guy, you know. And if you just perform some win, some lose, you just do a good team and you just forget about the stress.
When you were mentioning before, like one of the things that changed in your team was actually getting a manager and him helping you out with stuff. This is something that like the Asian teams seem to be very far ahead with, because we've heard stories that like some of their managers just spend all day like looking at their enemy, like writing little notes down, and then the team still decide the tactics, but they have like all this sort of man hours done for them, you know, so they don't have to do it themselves. I mean, do you think this is like a key for the West now, from your own experience using a manager? Is this what he's doing for you?
I think the manager has to be on every team. Like, you cannot even think be a pro team without a manager. I mean, there is some team who can do it, like EG, for example. I think they got no manager, and they are performing so well. But watch Fnatic, Gambit, they are top 2 teams, and SK, for example, they are 3 as well. And they got 3 managers, 1 manager each. So it means something. It means the manager is not there to say, I am Fnatic, I am Gambit. He's really doing a work behind, and you don't even know. Like, he's waking up. Sometimes he's cooking for you, and he's managing the screen, managing the travel, and he's doing this kind of thing that it costs you so much time. And instead of doing that, you can play and try to be strong, you know. So for me, have a manager is a must. Like, you cannot even be a pro without.
Does the fact that you've got other French guys in your team make it not as big a deal? Because I know some players, they might be the only player from their country in their team, you know, and they're having to live here.
Well, first, at one moment I just wanted to do French team for the communication and stuff, like Gambit, you know. But after, when you cannot find a good person at this post, you are like, what can I do? What can I do? And you try to convince someone to be on the team. But I wish I could. Freddy can speak French like us, you know, but it's not possible. So we just speak English, and I think it's fine.
For my last question, I want to do like a hypothetical, imaginary question. Aliens come to Earth, and then they say like, listen, we've surrounded the Earth, we've got like lasers, guns, you know, we can blow the Earth up now. But we've seen League of Legends, it's quite a cool game, you know. We're getting into League of Legends, we've got like aliens who can play League of Legends, they're really good. And so we're going to pick like ShLaYa, he has to be the captain of Team Earth, right? But since they know so many famous French players have played League of Legends, they're only going to let you pick French players to be in this super team that's going to play for the fate of the Earth. And because I don't want you to just pick all your members of your team now, you can only have like you, if you want to be in it, and 1 other French player. So the other 3 have to be other French players, but they can be from any point in history, you know, it can be in the past. Who would you pick for this team and why? Because I mean, it has to be a good team if we're going to beat the aliens.
I wish, you know, there is a like World Cup with only, you know, the country.
Nations,
Nation. I think it will be pretty. I think it will be nice. And like, so my pick will be. So there is me. No, from my team.
Okay.
I will pick Yellowstar from Fnatic.
Give me a reason for each as well.
So Nono can play support so good as well. And if Yellowstar is French and he has so much experience, you know. So I think it can be good, and yeah, I think Nono and Yellowstar. Else I will pick Dioud, but because it's my bot name. But if I cannot, I will pick Yellowstar instead, and try to do like Duobot. That's my Duobot. So Astop, like for me, is one of the best. So why not? And jungle, I would say hyrqbot from SK.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's a good team actually.
Actually, let me just ask you 2 more questions then, because since you're like an expert on French players compared to most of the people who are watching this now, so if we talk about hyrqbot actually, because he's someone who until his time in SK wasn't known at all, like outside of France, like not very many people knew about him at all. but he seems to be one of the reasons why their team sort of had like a better season than people expected. Really, people thought they'd be below EG, but they're actually above them. They're third best. Like, how much did you know about him before he joined SK? Like, did you know he would have this effect on them?
Well, before I was jungle, I was more nose than him, but I knew him and I know he was good. And he was streaming for Milano, I think, and I was watching him and I say he's really good. And I think one day he's gonna.
What's he good at, do you think?
Jungling, I think he's good. He has this map awareness that some jungle doesn't have, and I think Diamondprox got it. That's why he's there. And I think hyrqbot at the moment is on top 2 jungle, and I think if SK is strong, it's thanks to him. Like they can say, thanks to the Frenchie.
And then the other guy, Yellowstar, as well, because the interesting thing is, he was in teams in the past, like in Season 1, etc., and it was like good teams still, but then people only really know him now because he came into SK for a little while and now into Fnatic, and Fnatic's doing very well. I've heard, when I did an interview with Ocelot, he said he thinks Yellowstar has like the best calls, because like, in Europe at least, from like AD position, etc., like, what do you think of Yellowstar as a player? Like, what are his strengths, what's he really good at?
I think his consistency, consistent is really good, and if you got this one player, it means you can be pro. So I think he's strong, and he's doing calls as well, and he was AA, and second at with Nyjacky and sOAZ, so he has so much experience, and he has so much knowledge about the game. I think he's mechanically good, and I think his Fnatic does good. It's thanks to him as well, because it's a team and you cannot win alone.
Okay, do you have a final message, anything you want to say to thank someone or say hello to someone?
I will say thanks to you to interview me, first of all. I will thank every fan who is following AA and every fan of me. I will thank AA as well to support us and giving so much thing to help us to improve. And everyone who is watching this interview.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.